WarsawJS.
Hello, everyone. My name is Magdalena Ostoja-Chyżyńska. Oh, that's so many people now. It was less in like 10 minutes ago. Okay, so basically today I wanted to talk about developer-designer communication. And maybe at the beginning, I can give you a couple of words about me. So basically, I work as a chief designer at UX Girl Design Studio. I am a post front-end developer, so basically I have about 8 years. I did about 10 years in design, but beforehand I did a bit of front-end development too. I am a hidden Java lover, so some people hate me here. Basically, I'm a computer science graduate, so we can talk normally with me. And I am I'm a UX UI designer, as you know. I am leading design teams, and basically that's a couple of words about me. And maybe also about UX Girl. So what we actually do is that we design user experiences and user interfaces. We also do user research. We do, for example, IDIs. We talk with users. We think about how to design the interface. And what we specialize in is complex interfaces. And basically, you can say that a complex interface is an interface that has a lot of controls, like components. But maybe not really. So a complex interface is usually the interface that has a complex workflow like behind it. So basically, that is what is a complex interface for me. And we also do some design workshops, which is, I think, quite common now to do even online. Okay, so basically, why me? Why I'm doing this presentation on developer designer communication, why I am talking about it and not somebody else. So I have about 10, maybe more years of experience in design. And as I said, that's not incorporating the front-end design development work that I also done. And I have worked with about, I think, 75 plus developers. It's really hard to tell exactly how many developers I worked with, but this is something that I assume is the number that could be right. I'm not sure. And surprise that may come for you is that I actually enjoyed working with all the developers that I worked with. Yeah, this presentation is kind of directed now. So basically, what will we talk about today? And maybe I should inverse this question and say that what is working? Sorry. What will we not talk about today? So if you're a developer or maybe you're a designer, I don't know, there might be many people on here. So if you're either of that, you probably when you're reading about articles about the communication between developers and designers, you will see that there's many information about what are differences between these two, like how they cannot communicate, how there are problems with communication. So I don't really want to talk about these differences that there are between developers and designers. I want to talk about how to make it work, how to actually communicate, and let's leave the differences behind us, because I think that's easier then. And I would like to start with the setups. So if you are working with, if you're a developer, how many developers are there? Everybody? Probably. And designers? Okay, we have designers. And the other people, there are people that are not developers and not designers? Something like that? Oh, okay. Great. So basically, you have some setups in which you can work when you're a developer or designer or another person, probably also working in IT. And as to say, I have worked in different setups, and also I think sorry. And also I think that when you are working on one project and on another project, there could be different setup here and there. You can be in one today, but you can be in a different one tomorrow. And the first setup that I think could occur is like, I would say, triangular perfect kind of healthy setup in which you have the developers working directly with product owners or project managers, however you name it in your project, and also with the designers. And the same, like designers can work with product owners, designers can work with developers, and like we have this flow of communication that is like going through all of the people involved. But like there could be a less ideal situation, and you can have something like this. And this situation is quite like popular, I would say, in like banking projects where you have like big documentation and you have very complex processes and something that you actually, you have to document. And then we can have like a product owner, we can have that communicates with a designer. We have, of course, developers that communicate with the analysts, and basically the designer kind of provides some designs that are accepted by the PO in terms of business side, but then also kind of written up by the analysts, and the analysts kind of push the information back to the developers. So yeah, in this one, you can also be, you cannot be, but oops. I'm trying, sorry guys, okay. Another one that you can be in is like you have developers that communicate with the product owner, and the product owner then communicates with the designer. I name it that this is kind of like a bridge setup. Like it's not really healthy. Sometimes it can work, but yeah, it's a bit different. And last one, which is quite radical, I would say, is that when you have some developers and these developers have a manager, and just the manager kind of communicates with some business person, and this business person communicates with the designer. And of course, like the communication goes the other way around too. And in this one, you can see that probably not much communication between developers and designers. Why? I don't know. So the question I think we should be asking us like today is what to do to create a great product together, because we are talking about communication, but basically, why are we talking about the communication between designers and developers? We are talking about that so that we actually know how to create a great product. And I think that everybody wants to create a great product. So I've divided my presentation in dimensions that there are between like designers and developers in terms of their communication. And something that is like a bit funny for me is that I actually named this, as you see, developer designer communication. And probably someone of you should know that I am actually like a UI UX designer. And like when you find like UI UX design, you also have like ergonomics and you have other terms. And you have like an umbrella term for all of that. And that's basically human-computer interaction. You probably know that. Anybody knows about human-computer interaction? That's not a lot. You should know that. Anyway, so basically there was once a very wise professor, and he said that because this was not named human-computer interaction before, but it was actually named human-computer communication, just like the title of our talk. So there was a wise professor that said that it cannot be named human-computer communication because a human and a computer, like they are not really on the same level of progression. So like, I don't get that and I don't understand that, but that's basically what he said. And that's why in the end, the subject is basically named interaction. But as you see, I still think that developers and designers are on the same level of progress, and hence the communication and not interaction. So now I have a question. Do you know why Firefox? Like what's like the animal in the logo of the Firefox? What was that? Oh, God. Did I do that? No. Oh, okay, don't spoil it. Okay, so basically, like you look at the picture, you look at the animal, and you think, yeah, like it's a fox, right? It's Firefox, so it's a fox. Well, so basically, like I thought the same, but then and I actually researched it a bit, and I found out that it's actually not a fox. It's a red panda. And I don't know if you knew that. Did anybody know that? I know that here. Did you knew that? Did you know that? Just one person. Okay, so like as you can see, this is this little guys that are kind of funny, because when they kind of get scared, they like put both of their arms up, and this just looks funny and not really scary, but they don't know that. Let's keep it this way. So anyway, I don't know if you feel that, but if you actually like take a look at this icon, you can see that it actually looks like a fox. So like here, there's this white thing, and the thing at top is actually red. It kind of looks like a fox anyway, right? It does. I think it does look like a firefox, like a fox anyway. So basically, this was supposed to be a red panda, and I think like in between some communication, like this was basically lost. So the graphic designer did get some brief, I don't know, but it wasn't really a good brief. And this is what basically happens. So we don't want this to happen to our project, I think. So that's why we'll be talking about the dimensions for the communication today. And the first one, which I think is quite important, is a connection, is to have a connection. It's actually to connect when you're a developer, to connect with your designer. And also if you're a designer, to connect with your developer or developers. Is there anybody that like doesn't like is a developer and doesn't really have a connection with your designer here, like a direct connection? Not really. That's actually great, guys, because sometimes it happens that there is none such connection, and like basically then you will have to fix it. So you'll have to talk, for example, to the manager, like, yeah, maybe we should have this like meetings or something. And if you happen to be in such a position, it's actually quite easy to fix it, because you just go to the manager, tell a couple of things, and usually you're just the first person to ask that, so they will accept it. But if not, then you'll have to fight for it. But usually it's like that no one really asked about that. I can see that from all your cases, because you actually have it. And yeah, so here I just posted a couple of like sentences that you shouldn't really hear. So like you don't need to speak to the developers, you can speak to me, you can hear that from the managers, and then you actually know that it's a red flag. And also you should focus on your code and yeah, not talk. So this is also a red flag. I hope you didn't hear that like ever. So basically having a connection, having an access to your designer, to your developer, it's very important. And that's good that you all have that. And the second dimension that I think is quite important are the meetings. And now like the meetings like is a meeting. So it's like synchronous communication, right? So I'm not talking about Slack. I'm not talking about like writing to each other emails and stuff like that. This is also cool and also very important, but meetings, this is a whole different level of communication. So you should have meetings. And so I found out like recently when there was, you know, the whole COVID thing and stuff, that meetings on site and meetings online, like they don't really differ that much. So basically, if you talk online, it's kind of the same level of productivity, sometimes even higher than when you talk face to face. And of course, it's great like to see each other, like, you know, to turn on the camera. But like I also found that it's not really that important. So if your developer like I don't know, is a timid person, or like the designer is a timid person, doesn't want to turn on the camera, it's fine. Like it will not really affect that much of the productivity that you can have on the meetings. But of course, you know, if you're doing a business meeting and you don't turn on the camera, that's bad. But we're not talking about that, right? So I guess that's okay. And also the second thing about the meetings is that the meetings should be visual. So when I was doing this research for this presentation, apart from the experience that I like gathered, I also talked with a couple of developers, just like, you know, like an interviews, like in-depth interviews. And I asked them, what is the most important thing when you are on a meeting with a designer? And basically what they said is that it should be visual. So like the designer should actually show something. Because when the designer is just talking and like not showing anything, I don't really like know what to comment. I cannot really feedback it. And it's really hard sometimes to imagine things. It might be easy for the designer. It might not be easy for the developer. So that's why the designers like should always like show something. If the designer is not showing something, maybe tell your designer, for example, let's just turn on like a whiteboard and just sketch some things. Like that might be a cool idea, and then it will add to your like visuality of the meeting, and you can get to agreement faster, basically. So this is kind of a very important thing. And the third important thing about the meetings is that that may be more of a tip for the designer and not really for you as developers, is that when a designer is showing something, when a designer is showing an interface that she designed, like it's really hard to take it in without some, for example, story, without some arguments about why this is better, why the other thing is worse. And like, if you're a designer, just tell these stories. So like, I designed it this way because this and that. So like, the developer is not really just like a mechanical person that only listens to what should be done. Like everybody has empathy, and it's much easier to talk about something when all of the people know the same story behind it. So if you're a developer and the designer is just showing you things, you can just ask. It's not that the designer like is hiding something and doesn't want to tell you that. Probably they just didn't think about that it's important for you to know these things. And yeah, nothing else here. So the third dimension that I think is also quite important is respect and trust. And you might laugh on like at the title of this screen. So yeah, you can laugh at that, of course. But this is really simple, and this is, I think, really powerful. So you have to remember that there is like a space that your designer does, and there is a space that you as a developer you do. And like sometimes I can feel that some people, like some designers, want to tell the developers how to do their job, and the developers want to tell the designers how to do their job. So like, maybe don't do that. If you really think that something is wrong, just give some small suggestions. But I think that we should all respect each other. If this person is in this role, it's probably like there is a good reason that this person is in this role. So I would say that yeah, just trust this person that she will do a good job. And also, if you really feel that you have to take this person's job, just ask if you can do that. If you can recommend something, if you can do this part, if you can like, because like you might think like, how is that possible? So I will tell you like one example. For example, interactions. You can of course have a designer that designs you the interaction from start to the end, but sometimes it's just basically sending a link like, can you do an interaction that is similar to this one, right? And then basically the developer does the animation part, for example. So so it could be like that, and sometimes the other person kind of does part of the other person's job. So that's normal. It happens, but just keep everything like settled here. And the next thing that is quite important is openness. And you probably know or heard on some like workshops what actually means how to talk in an open way. So basically, talking in an open way is talking so that not everything is like set in stone. So you present something and you basically say, so I think this is like the best possible solution, but if you have some other thoughts about that, you can tell me, basically stuff like that. So it's not talking right, this should be like that, and like we cannot really change that. Just talk like in an open way, maybe something could change. And this could basically mean that your partner, this developer, this designer can have like better ideas. For example, knows about some technical constraints or some business constraints that are quite important, and like something should be done in a different way. So you don't know that, and you should share all this information that you have and probably decide on a different outcome. Yeah, and also quite an important thing is that you should share your thoughts and apprehensions and never leave anything like open. So if you feel you have some questions unanswered and you're on a meeting and you didn't answer this question, yeah, you should have done that. So asking questions is important, and getting all the answers that you need is also important. And also, a very important dimension is knowledge sharing, but I think you probably know that since developers share the knowledge all the time. So maybe this is more for the designers part. So it is quite like cool to talk about like lend knowledge and consult each other during the project. And it's not really like, of course, you work on some things, so you have to consult. Yeah, of course. But like sometimes I can give you for an example that you have just started working on something and you're like a Flutter developer, right? And you're doing some Android project. And basically you have a designer that did a lot of iOS's project recently, and like they are not really that knowledgeable and on the newest good practices for Android. So like, this is the time that, of course, the designer can learn a bit like themselves, but since there is a developer just in the same project, she should just ask questions about that and also try to share this knowledge, because it might be much faster to just ask the question than Google it for hours to come and stuff like that. So yeah, try to share this this knowledge throughout the project. And a very important thing that I just said before is that, of course, sharing knowledge builds trust between all of you. And so that's just a greater bonus for you here. And of course, like there is like the last dimension, which would be the handoff. So there comes a time, and this could be several times in a project. This could be, if you're in a more waterfall project, it will be probably at the end of the project, when there has to be this moment of getting the designs to the developer and just using it. And I think that there are like a couple of things that you should remember when accepting the designs or creating the designs. And first one would be that the design should be easy to use. And what does this exactly mean? So of course, when you're a designer, you can just send, I don't know, in the past it was like Photoshop files, right? Then it was more like, I don't know, PDF files, PNG files, of course. But right now we have very good tools for that. We have Zeppelin, we have all the others like Figma, and all the other tools where the developers can do, for example, the front-end developers can do really a small work with that, and in terms of pixels, for example. And also, it is just better when you have comments and all the stuff like that. So if the design is not easy to use, like how the developers will use it, like it will be really hard. And I also found that I think I was using one of the developers that actually said that was the one that I was working with, and we were using I think InVision. And I realized just at the end of the project that when you actually give very small permissions to these people, like in InVision, they kind of see the project in a whole different way. I haven't really tested that before, and when they actually showed me, I was like, yeah, that is super hard to navigate, so I shouldn't really use this tool for that. So maybe if you're a designer, check how your developer will be looking at your design before, because it might just be a different view, like they don't have your permissions. That's just different. And the second thing that you should remember is that design should be clear and consistent. So from the point of a designer, of course, you have to create the components that are consistent, like the whole process should be consistent. But from the developer point of view, if you see that something is not consistent, just tell the designer, like they will fix it probably, I think. And the design should be without ambiguous meanings. So if there is like a screen and you feel that some screen is missing after that because you don't know what will happen, that's probably it. The screen is missing. And it's not that you don't know what to actually code. And the last thing is that the design should be complete. This means that when you look at the design, there are no questions unanswered. And my great tip for that is that when you are creating some screens and you feel that they need a little bit more documentation, just give a small comments near the screens for your developers basically to read after that. So, and of course, this tip is for like the artboard of the whole screens and not really like previewing it in some interaction mode, because then it's really hard to do some comments. But I'm meaning just like on an artboard, create some comments and leave it for the developer to read. And I think after all, like they will not be contacting you, that often. But I also think that it's always better to have all the information near the mockups and near the designs, and not really in some document or in some email. So this will help you for the design to be complete. And I also created some best practices for developer-designer communication that I was talking about them like through the whole presentation now. And it's this thing. So if you want to like screenshot it or something, then it's the time. But basically, I think I actually shared all of them with you already. So just 2 seconds for that. Okay. And what we have to remember is that even though UX is like in my like job position, so it's a UX UI designer, I feel that everybody that is in the project is actually contributing to great UX. So like if you're a developer, you're basically also doing a UX. And great products can only be created, of course, when everybody is collaborating and everybody is thinking about the user experience. And as I said, I feel like everybody wants to create great products. And I also think that you also want to create a great product, right? And this screen I actually found in some wiki of a project when I was working in a big corporation. I will not tell the name, but it was quite funny for me. And I feel like everybody was working like their own ways. But then I saw this picture and then I said, yeah, so basically everybody is working towards common goal. And I think this is something that should always kind of make a team of us, right? At the end of the project, at also the beginning of the project. Thanks.
Wow. Bravo.